Psalm 100. It's a really good psalm for these days around Thanksgiving. I was thinking about how it seems trite to say every day should be Thanksgiving Day, but it's not trite. I mean, that's the truth. For we who believe in the love and grace of God, why would every day not be Thanksgiving Day? Okay. Let's start with, we talked about verse 1 yesterday. Shout for joy to the Lord, all the earth. Worship the Lord with gladness. Come before him with joyful songs. Man, is this a positive, it's a hokey way to say it, but what an upbeat poem. Shout for joy to the Lord, all the earth. Worship the Lord with gladness. Come before him with joyful songs. I kind of like that idea. Worship the Lord with gladness. Now, I talked about this a good bit, but I'm going to say it again. I think many, if not most, churches today and Christians kind of have narrowed worship down to the music that we do, right? This is the worship service. Well, yeah. If we do it with a sincere and whole heart, that, when we sing the songs, that can be, should be worship. But oh my gosh, worship is so much bigger than that. Worship the Lord with gladness. Okay, and the psalmist is referring to the musical portion. Come before him with joyful songs. I don't know enough about the actual practice of temple worship to say I've got my, I get it. But I do know this much. The worship of a Jew at the temple, which this psalm was written in a time period where that was primarily the temple was the center of a Jewish worship, and at the center of that was thanksgiving and sacrifice. Yes, there were temple musicians. David had stipulated this for Solomon, that the temple musicians would be well taken care of. Although it was a barter society back then, in our terminology, they would have been salaried employees of the temple. These were not just volunteer musicians, but they were paid. But that was not the essence of worship at the temple. The essence of worship at the temple was to bring one's sacrifice. There were sacrifices for sin, and transgression, but there were also the fellowship offerings and the thanksgiving offerings. And the psalmist says, worship the Lord with gladness, come before him with joyful songs. So that it wasn't just a matter of me, dragging in a sheep or a goat or a calf and gross as it sounds to us, then having it slaughtered there at the temple and then butchered and then cooked. This, I mean, that was not an hour's worth of church. Would have taken a good part of your day. And it was to be thought of not just as an obligation, but beyond the obligation, as a thing to be grateful for and glad about. Worship the Lord with gladness. What should make us glad about worship? Well, I can only tell you from my perspective. I mean, because the psalmist doesn't really, well, he kind of later on addresses the why behind the gladness of worship. But for me, it starts with the fact, or my belief in the fact, that God treasures me, that He accepts my sacrifice, that He desires uninterrupted fellowship with me, and for me on this side of the cross, that He has made every provision for that. And the list of provisions is pretty small. He provided Jesus to pay for and take away my sin. He provides me with His grace. And then there is my part, which is not to earn. I don't earn God's grace. I don't get more of it if I do anything. If I could get more of it by doing, it's not grace anymore. But it's His grace that makes it possible for me to respond to Him with gladness. I'm so glad and thankful that Jesus saved me, not out of obligation, but out of love. For us on this side of the cross, worshiping the Lord with gladness is a bigger deal. And maybe that's not the right way for me to say it. It's different than it was on that side of the cross. We have a secure and a confidence that I don't think a Jew in the day when this psalm was written would have. And yet, his urging, his idea here is that you worship the Lord with gladness. Now, there are times when it's very difficult to worship the Lord with gladness. When life is really difficult. If you've had the loss of a loved one, worshiping the Lord with gladness is a very difficult thing. When we are dealing with loss, whether it's relational or occupational or on whatever other level the loss is, it is hard to worship the Lord with gladness. It is very difficult, not impossible, but very difficult to worship the Lord with gladness if you struggle with depression. I know this firsthand. When I was and when I become depressed, worshiping the Lord requires effort. The gladness of life has dried up. So what if you are depressed and the psalmist says, worship the Lord with gladness, then what do you do with that on a personal level? Well, and this can be taken in so many different and bad ways, but I believe you act as if. You act. What would a grateful person do? What would that look like for me to be grateful? And then I do that. It's interesting how making that kind of choice and then pursuing that kind of choice can reorient my heart and mind. Is it the cure? I don't think so. But I think there is no cure without it. To worship the Lord with gladness, even if I don't feel glad, it's a challenge. And if you struggle with depression, it probably sounds like what a stupid thing for somebody to say. Just worship Him with gladness. Well, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is think about what would gladness look like and make a choice to act in that way. Act as if. Okay. What is worship? That's the bigger nut to crack here. Kind of poked around at it. Music can be worship, yeah. But that's not the extent of worship. Worship, I did a word study on worship. And it was very interesting because when you do a word study, you want to go back and back and back as far as you can to the origin of the meaning of that word. And in this case, with the word worship, the roots go back to, well, it means to kiss toward. Is that like, well, let's blow God a kiss? Well, not really, but it does have to do with express your affection. In fact, one of the scholars I consulted said that it comes from the idea of how a dog licks the hand of its master. And if you've ever had dogs or been around dogs, they're lickers, but they don't lick everything. Well, when they're puppies, they do. But the point of that idea is it's the adoration. It's worship is me adoring God, expressing my affection for Him. And it's my belief that there should be no part of my life that I can't do that with. My work, whatever it is, can be an expression of my affection for God. I mean, Paul writes, whatever you do it with your whole heart, as if the Lord Himself was your boss. Okay? My relationships, how I conduct my relationships can be an expression of adoration, affection for God. Love the Lord your God. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And the second is love your neighbor as yourself. Every aspect of my life can be an act of worship. When you're in church this weekend, I have a challenge that when it's time to sing with gladness. Come before the Lord with joyful songs, even, and this is for me, even when I don't really like the songs. I think these are not great selections. I gotta, okay. It's what I put in that matters. Okay, and then here's the second thing. What if you listening to the message could be an act of worship? I'm listening in a way that expresses my affection, gratitude, to God. Well, okay. Well, I'm done for today. I'll see you next time on So Care with Stevie Boy.